Ladies and gentlemen, from Tehran to Los Angeles, I'm Farhad Khorsani, attorney based in Los Angeles. Here with me on the line today is Marcus Ruiz Evans. He's the president of Yes California, the CalExit organization. Marcus, thank you for being with us here today. Would you like to introduce yourself to our audience, international and Iranians, who would like to learn about the Yes California and your movement?
Farhad, thank you for having me out today. I really enjoyed our conversation yesterday where we connected on the message that Yes California had sent out directly to the people of Iran in April. And I was very pleased to re-update that message today, inspired by you, sir, in our conversation yesterday. My name is Marcus Ruiz Evans. I founded, or was one of the co-founders of the CalExit movement, the idea that California could separate from America. The book California's Next Century 2000 was published in 2012, and I was the first author of that book. The first article about CalExit was by Tom Elias in 2013, covering California's Next Century 2.0. And that was the first time anybody seriously talked about CalExit. I've been with the movement from the beginning. I helped get it started, and I was the intellectual grandfather, if you will. But today I'm just a regular activist, one of 32% of Californians, according to Reuters Ipsos and Stanford University, who in February 2017 found were willing to secede.
Thank you, Marcus. So there is a video of you paying tribute to the Iranian people, and it's on YouTube and it's on your social media. You can simply Google and see that. So what is that about?
Yes, California and the CalExit movement wanted to show something that everybody in California already knows and that many of us in CalExit say routinely. California is a different culture than America. We just are. And that has been that way for 100 years. We can go back to 1911 and show you different policy stances based upon the demographics and how diverse California was and the way we thought differently. That's over 100 years ago. And so we wanted to personify that. We made a video and we directed it directly to the people of Iran, which sounds controversial. And obviously some feathers were ruffled and not everybody liked the fact that we did that. But all we said in that video was that California is diverse. California has many different peoples from around the world who live here. And our culture that we're very proud of, and we simply refer to as our value system here, is actually made up of many different cultures. People who've come here in large numbers and lived here. The Persian people, the Iranian, the people of Iran are just one of many groups. Armenians, Jews, Mexicans, El Salvadorans, Sikhs, Japanese, who've been here for a long time in big numbers. And because of that, they've helped create California culture. And so if we're proud about being Californians and we're proud of the fact that we have a different culture than America, it's because of all the people who came here. And so that means I can't be proud of being a Californian and my culture here if I'm not also proud of the fact that Iranian people came here in large numbers with their culture intact, have kept it intact, and California is better off for it. That's all I was trying to say.
How did you initially did connect with Iranians and Iranian people?
We had been saying, basically 2016, we got a lot of international press. When Donald Trump was elected, our movement was already growing. We started before when Obama was around, but we really got a lot of growth with Trump. When that happened, we got international press. We were covered around the world. We started seeing some people in Iran talking about CalExit and what that possibly would mean and if California is a little bit different. We saw that on social media. So we said, let's make a video directly to the people of Iran who we see on social media answering their questions, saying, yes, if you noticed us because of world news, because Trump and Californians reacted so viscerally to that, then we want to make a message directly to you. And so we made the option of saying if we made a video to the people of Iran, it would really exemplify what we're trying to prove. You know, I could have made that video directly to the people of Germany. or to the people of Belgium. It wouldn't have had as controversial a stance. And so we made it to a controversial country that Americans routinely do not talk well of, and many Americans view as an enemy. And what we wanted to say, well, if that's how Americans are, let's not just say it. Let's show it for real. Californians are different. Our culture is different, and we do not want to share American culture. And so we said, hey, let's take something that everyone in California agrees with, but just make it focused to the people of Iran. And I got to tell you, that really pissed off a lot of people in America. But every Californian that I showed that message we made directly to the people of Iran, and I sent you some of the videos, I asked people in California, did I say something that's outrageous here that we in California don't agree with? No one said that I was wrong. Every person in California that I showed that video to the people of Iran said, yeah, that's pretty much what we are and how we think. So it really showcased how California is different from America, and we were able to prove that with this video. And we are very appreciative to the people of Iran, because CalExit was the 7th most popular word on Twitter in America because of that video, because of the love that we Californians received back, just overwhelming from the people, not the government, but directly from the people of Iran.
Right. And then obviously, I watched your video. The first time I watched it, I was really moved, very inspiring.
Thank you.
And it was very controversial in Iran and here in the United States and California. As we know, there's been newspapers who try to kind of label you or the movement as un-American or trying to divide America or these kind of things. What is your response to these people?
I love California, and I think our government's pretty good, and I think our newspapers are pretty good. And I don't think we're perfect. California still has race issues. We are still not as fair to the people who live here from whatever culture they live that aren't white. We need to improve on that. But I think we've come a long way, and I'm so very proud. That being said, the fact is that California is part of America. And there are people with money and power who do not want the message that Californians think that they're a separate culture and can survive as a nation to get out there. And so they will sue, say, and do, and make sure certain things aren't ever seen to keep that in reality. The Sacramento Bee editorial board, that means the people who run the newspaper, not just a reporter, the actual people that make all the decisions on what that newspaper is going to say, wrote a special article slamming Yes California for that video. And what I found incredible and offensive was they didn't take any stance on, well, I said California values are about diversity and respecting cultures coming here and retaining some heritage. Sacramento Bee said nothing about that. Well, that's a California value. They could have slammed us and they could have criticized us and said, but yes, technically they're right that California is diverse and appreciates people from around the world, but these guys are fools and they shouldn't be listened to. They're not the right messengers. That's not what the Sacramento Bee said. These are the people who run the largest newspaper in the capital of the world's 5th largest economy. People run the newspaper in the capital of California, and what they said was that video is horrible and garbage. Don't even look at it. That almost sounds like they're trashing California values, which I know no one in California would be okay with. The other thing that newspaper article said was, don't be fooled, the Iranian people do not believe any of this and have no interest in this video. So I guess they were talking about you, Farad. The Sacramento Bee said you would never be interested in the idea of California being independent. You love America, have absolutely no interest in that, and don't believe that California culture is that different from America, and don't believe that California can operate as a nation. I know that's not true. I've met other Iranians. I've met millions of Californians. I know that the Sacramento Bee straight up lied about Iranian people in California and about California culture. And that's the battle we have to face, where a place that I love, and I respect journalists and the profession, but sometimes they straight up lie. Farad, is that true? The Sacramento Bee says Iranian people have no recognition that California culture is different than American. All Iranian people, this is according to Sacramento Bee, see California as the exact same place culturally as Nebraska or Tennessee. And Iranian people know that. And Iranian people have no concept of California being a better place that's more welcoming to them than America. I mean, is that true? You and I talked for an hour. I know it's not. So
Right.
why is the Sacramento Bee lying about you and a couple million people here in California? Why do they get a good way with that?
Certainly that's not true, and obviously they can't speak on our behalf for sure. I mean, we have.
They said they could.
I mean, we have our own media. I guess we can send our message out there. Obviously, you have a lot of support among Iranians inside Iran and in California. And according to the latest numbers, we know there's between 500,000 to 1 million Iranians living in California. So Iranians are Californians. They can, you know, if you take these to the ballot in the next election, they can vote for you. And, you know, if a lot of people vote for you and you have enough numbers, you can take it to the next level. And as we saw on Twitter and on social media, because those are all our only medias, you know, we don't have our own newspaper like them, people who attack us. But as we saw last year, or I think it was back in 2017, there was this Twitter storm, hashtags, you know, Iran, California unity and CalExit. You gained a lot of support from people of Iran, and they sent you messages, video messages, and, you know, they posted on social media, used hashtags, and we made it happen. It was Californians and Iranians. And I think for the past couple of decades, let's review the history, the recent history of Iran and United States. So what has happened in the past 100 years? Let's go back to World War II. So at the end of World War II, I believe it was 1944, when Nazi Germany was losing the war. And they perceived Iran, the Allies, perceived Iran as an ally of Germany or the Axis, because you know, Hitler said, you know, we are Aryans, Iranians are Aryans, and they had a lot of you know, commercial transactions between each other, and German people were working in Iran. So initially, the Allies asked the Shah of Iran, the then Shah of Iran, Reza Shah, to expel the Nazi Germans from Iran. And he didn't do that because they were actually helping the Iranian people get their industries going. They were building trains, railways, and you know, factories in Iran, the Germans. So they didn't. He didn't do that. So what happened was, next, at the end of the war, the British and the Russians attacked Iran. Russians from the north and the British from the south. They attacked Iran, and then they had this conference in Tehran, which is known as Tehran Conference, which Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister of the UK, Franklin D. Roosevelt, the then President of the United States, and Joseph Stalin of Russia, they attended this conference in Tehran. In 1944, they removed the Shah of Iran, Reza Shah, and they put in place his son, Mohammad Reza Shah, as the next Shah. They installed him as the next Shah. He was a very young and weak Shah. He was only 21 years old at the time. So that's the first interaction that Iran has with the United States in the past century. So the time goes on. Mohammad Reza Shah grows as the Shah of Iran, the ruling Shah of Iran. In 1953, Prime Minister Mossadegh, he comes into power. He's gaining more power, and people regarded him as the, you know, democratically elected prime minister, who was actually serving under the Shah, though. So there's a coup. A coup happens, and they basically remove him from power. in 1953, and they reinstate the Mohammad Reza Shah of Iran. And now we know, after this secret information became declassified in, I believe it was 2000, that CIA was behind this operation, and it was called Operation Ajax. They removed Prime Minister of Iran and reinstated the Shah of Iran. That's 1953. So in 1979, we know the Islamic Revolution of Iran happened. And the Shah of Iran, Mohammad Reza Shah, the Shah who was installed by the Allies in 1944 and who was supported by the Allies in 1953, so he had his backing. He had their backing, the United States. And at the time, the president of the United States was Jimmy Carter. So Jimmy Carter was, supposedly a friend and ally of the Shah and Iran. And they would, the Shah of Iran and his wife would go to the White House for Christmas and for New Year, and Jimmy Carter and his wife would travel to Iran to visit Shah of Iran, and they had all these meetings, and they were drinking with each other, and Iran was supposedly the ally of the United States in the Middle East. But what happened when the Islamic movement started in Iran? They stopped supporting the Shah. They basically let him down. Jimmy Carter let the Shah down. With the information that we have today, we know that he actually helped and paid and armed the Islamists and helped the overthrow of the Shah. That's 1979. And people are still sour. Some people, think, they did that to us. And now
they should still be sour.
Right. And fast forward to 2020. What is going on right now? After all these years, there's still talk about, how the United States government wants to overthrow the Ayatollahs or the mullahs, the current government of Iran, or, they might go into war with Iran. So I think the Iranian people are confused. The Iranian people don't trust the U.S. government, because they look back at their history and they see that, during times the United States government tried to overthrow the leaders of Iran, whether they were Shah, the king, or Ayatollah, or even democratically elected prime minister. They overthrew all of them, like Reza Shah, Mohammad Reza Shah, Mossadegh, the late Shah, and now the mullahs, the Iranian government, current Islamic Republic of Iran. So I think they're confused. They don't know what does the U.S. government want. Are they with the people? Do they support the people? Because they always have this message. Sometimes the U.S. presidents during the Persian New Year, they send a message to Iranian people. Obama did send these messages. I believe Trump also did. They say that we, support you, the Iran. They actually talk directly to the Iranian people, and they say, people of Iran, we support you. We support human rights, and we consider you separate from your government. Although we are putting sanctions on your government, we are isolating your government, we are weakening your governments, we're not selling weapons to your governments, we're not letting your government to have any international economic transactions, we're not letting your government sell oil, so they don't have any revenues. Although we are doing all this, but that's not what we want to do to you. We're actually supporting you, but in reality, they're hurting the ordinary Iranian people. Right now, after Trump pulled out of the JCPOA, which was the Iran nuclear deal, he put the sanctions back, the economic sanctions back in effect on Iran. So currently the employment rate is so high, inflation rate is so high, people are in a bad shape economically, and they're sour because they hear all these, messages from the media that, we love Iranian people, we support Iranian people, but at the same time, they see that they're being hurt by the American government, the U.S. government. So, what do you think, Marcus? What's the problem here? What does the U.S. government want?
Well, if I'm not mistaken, there was an embargo and sanctions against Iran during the 2 terms of Obama. While he was still working with the Iranians and trying to reduce it, there was still some sort of regulations against the Iranian economy. Like, it wasn't all wiped out, if I'm not mistaken. And we can go back to George W. Bush was actually the first one who talked about, let's blow up Iran. So this isn't just Trump. W wanted to do this and talked about it. That's 2 American presidents. And then you go through Obama, the good American president. To the best of my knowledge, I could be wrong, but Iran still suffered economically massively, even while Obama was saying, hey, I'm trying to make it better. So that's 3 American presidencies, 3, where it just ends up with the Iranians getting embargoed and hurt. So I would say focus on actions, like we talked about last night, and not words. And I would encourage the Iranian people, not the Iranian government, the people of Iran, study American foreign policy. The fact is that I think the Iranian people are confused about what to think about America because they focused too much on Iran. Yes, I think the Iranian people are overly focused on Iran. And as a Latino, I would say, look at what America's done to other countries. When they overthrew the Democratic Prime Minister of Iran, that was the year before or the year after they did the exact same thing in Guatemala. You can look it up. So we have the CIA doing one thing in Iran and then doing literally the same thing in Guatemala and other countries. And as far as installing the Shah against the will of his people and teaching his staff how to torture and intimidate the public through the CIA and military personnel. I mean, Americans sent Americans over there to torture Iranians and train other Iranians on how to torture Iranians so that the Shah could stay in power. They did that in Chile, in Argentina, in Brazil, in Mexico, in El Salvador. Those aren't Persian countries. Those are Latino. Exact same story. So the Iranian people, I would say, take a look at what America does, not what they say, at what they do. Obama, the good president, right, overthrew Libya. It's a basket case now. Those people are dying in the streets and being raped in public. That was all Obama and Clinton's idea. Now, maybe they thought they had a right to do it, but they left a mess. Look at Iraq. It's a mess. The Iraqi people are terrified of their own community. I'm not endorsing Saddam, but those people are way more scared than when he was around. Let's also look at Honduras. Obama okayed the overthrow of the Honduran government. You never hear about that.
I have lost your sound. Are we having a technical difficulty?
Let me call you right back Can you hear me now, Farhad?
Oh, okay. I guess I lost you for a minute.
Sorry. Yeah, the phone cut out. Anyways, just to repeat, look at Chile, look at Argentina, look at El Salvador, look at Mexico, look at Latin American countries. Latin American countries were overthrown and the prime minister was executed in Guatemala right around the same time they did the same thing in Iran. Coincidence? Installing brutal dictators like they did with the Shah in Iran. Like you said, during Carter in the late 60s, early 70s, they did the same thing with Pinochet in Chile, in Argentina. So I think when you look at what America does, not what they say, the pattern's very clear. This is a country that has no problem overruling the will of smaller countries and installing leadership to get whatever they want at that point. And if they need to have the CIA and special military go in there in order to train people or kill them themselves, as they did in El Salvador. Yes, Ronald Reagan sent the American military in El Salvador to kill off communities so that they could win that war. Pregnant women were shot in the stomach. They were Latino. They weren't Muslim. Didn't matter. So I think the pattern's clear. Watch what they do, not what they say. And even when Obama was around, he overthrew Libya, trashed it, overthrew Honduras, destroyed it, mismanaged Iraq. The Philippines also got a bad deal. And I also think, what kind of country won't admit their wrongs? Obama was supposedly the great president, right? He never admitted that they overthrew your government and installed a dictator and then helped that guy kill your people in order to stay in power. He couldn't even admit it. Let's look at Obama when he went to the Philippines. They asked him, Obama, didn't America commit a genocide in the Philippines? Didn't American generals order the execution of every Filipino child under age 12? Yeah. And they killed 1 million of them and caused a genocide and then ran a puppet government for decades. Obama couldn't even acknowledge that either. And when he was asked about it by the Filipinos, he just acted like it never happened. So that's the good president.
Okay. Marcus, what do you think are the prospects of Iran-United States relationships, and how would a independent California be different from United States?
Californians were against the Vietnam War, and they were against the Iraq War. The reason that I got into CalExit was in 2013, I was watching television in Marin County at my tia's, that means aunt in Mexican. And they had a news program saying, well, America's going to go in and invade Iraq, because they did a poll and 70% of Americans said, let's invade Iraq. 5 minutes later, same day, minutes later, news came on. Oh, poll of Californians says 70% against the war. So I got started writing this book about CalExit, not to say let's secede, but to just study the differences in culture. And I got to tell you, the Iraq War, 70% of Californians were against it and 70% of Americans were for it. Same thing with Vietnam. We do not back wars. We don't like them. That goes back to the 60s, 50 years. Americans seem to like any war you put in front of them. There's the military-industrial complex, and the military is very popular. Now, Californians don't really like war. Haven't done for the last half century. Americans do. So if California is independent, you're going to find a country that doesn't really think invading people and blowing them up is a good idea. And you don't need to take my word at that. Iranian people, look at the culture of California. Look at our history. Look at all the wars we protest. Look at how we treat the military here. You'll see a huge difference going back decades. I didn't make that happen. So an independent California means someone who knows America but says, whoa, I don't think we should be intimidating and threatening people. And we would be on the world stage. And as the 5th largest economy and the creator of the internet and Silicon Valley and smartphones and laptops and Hollywood movies, our ability to push a message on the world stage is equivalent, if not better, than America's. So it is in your interest, if you don't want anything bad to happen to you, to encourage a California to be a bulwark, a balancing act to America. Because I got to tell you, the American culture has learned nothing about wars. The Iraq War was a mistake. I think there's 15 to 25,000 Americans who are missing arms and legs. Americans don't care. They feel bad for those people, but that didn't discourage anyone in America thinking, let's launch another war. If there was another war announced tomorrow, all Americans would not even think about how Iraq was ruined. Thousands of Americans were ruined. They would just say, sure, let's go for it. Because that's what this country is. You give them a war for democracy or freedom, some buzzword, they're all about it. And that's even with, the Iraq War was disastrous for America. Financially, they violated international law. It ruined the image. And I live in Fresno where I get to see these veterans walking around. These guys never came back mentally, and women. They're destroyed people. 15 to 25,000 of them are missing limbs. And then another 100,000 of them are missing their brain. It's mentally there, but they're just not coming back. It destroys people here. And we got 500,000 or more civilians in Iraq killed and ruined our reputation and lost money for what? And yet America is just as willing to go into another war if someone like Biden sold it to them. And I got to point something out. We talked about this yesterday, Farhad. The people of Iran don't assume that because Biden talks like Obama, it's all different. Look up someone called, or a group called the neoconservatives, neoconservatives. Biden just hired a lot of them. Those are the people that pushed Trump to blow up Iran. Those are the people that pushed W to blow up Iran. Those were the people who opposed Obama. And Biden just hired a bunch of them as advisors. What do you think that means?
So in this way, I guess the Iran and United States relationship in the near future, at least, doesn't really look very bright.
It'd be better than Trump, but you know, I wouldn't expect much better. The fact is that the American military establishment runs the American military. It doesn't matter who's president. Okay, so George W. Bush was all about invading Iraq. And Obama said, oh, we hate the invasion of Iraq. He kept all the same generals in power. He got out of Iraq like way late. He talked about how he's going to shut down Guantanamo Bay and get out of Afghanistan. Never did either one of those. There's a military industrial complex and they run everything. So it's not about Biden or Obama. It's about who's in charge of the Pentagon. And has the Pentagon decided, independent of the American people, because they don't care what the Americans think, what's going to happen? I don't know the answer to that. But unless you're sure that the American Pentagon has decided that it's not worth it to invade Iran, then it don't matter that Biden was elected, because he don't actually pull the strings. The Pentagon does. And they do things independently of the advice of the president. That's why we're still in Afghanistan and never got out of Iraq, really, and never really joined the International Criminal Court, and never sent our Navy SEALs to go to war crimes trials when they executed civilians in broad daylight.
So who's behind all this? Is there a shadow government, or what are we talking about?
I'm not going to answer that question with respect, because if I do, it comes off as conspiracy theory, and I'll immediately be thrown into that group. I will say, whatever you want to call it, there was a study done by Princeton University, that was Princeton University and Northwestern University, came out around 2016, 2014, when Obama was president. It was a study of the last 40 years of laws in America. And what it said was that the 1% or the super wealthy get everything they're asking for, and the American public don't really get anything they want. That's Princeton University and Northwestern University, and it was backed up by the Harvard Business School. It was a 30 to 40 year longitudinal study of all laws in California going back to Carter. And what it said is that whatever the Americans want in the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, they don't get. Rich, powerful companies get whatever they want. So somebody with a lot of money and power who isn't elected and isn't the people is pulling the shots. And Princeton University said that, Harvard Business School and Northwestern University. Who conspiracy theory, but for a fact, government in America doesn't do what the people here actually want. It does what kind of a 1% group behind the scenes says.
Okay. Marcus, how would a independent California treat Iran? What kind of relationship an independent California would have with Iran?
I would say that an independent California Donald Trump said, let's build a wall to keep Latinos and Mexicans out. And he also talked about how all Mexicans are rapists. Gavin Newsom flew to El Salvador and other Latin American countries right after he became in charge of California. So California elects our leader. Within seconds, the first thing he does is fly to Latin America. So he's in Latin America, and he goes on the largest Latino TV show and says, we have a separate foreign policy from America. It was the biggest rebuff of Trump and America hates Latinos that we could do. And it was very bold. Governors are not supposed to do that. He acted like a president. No one in California was upset. We loved him for it. So California loves saying, oh, is that what America wants? We don't want any of that. We're going to do our own thing and don't even think we think like them. We have 1 million Persian people here in California. My stepmom's best friend was Persian. The publisher of my book, Camby's from Camby's Mostafizadeh, was the publisher of my book. One of my best friends was also Iranian growing up. Iranian people are all over the place. Okay, my stepmom's best friend doesn't know the publisher of my book. They just both happen to be Iranian. So since we have Iranians everywhere, and they're
historically, yeah, Iranians, the first group of Iranians who moved to the United States, they settled down in Los Angeles. So Iranians do romanticize, in a way, California and Los Angeles specifically, because they've been living here for decades.
Yes.
There's Persian Square here now on Wilshire. There's Tehrangeles, where the Westwood area. That's what the Iranian people call it, because there's a lot of Iranian peoples there, and Tehrangeles is a combination of Tehran and Los Angeles. So there we have Tehrangeles, and historically Iranians loved California, and they still do to this day. So I guess on their behalf, I want to ask you, how would the independent California treat them? What issues that Iran and the United States have today would California try to help with? What kind of relationship also California would have with the United States?
Well, the relationship that California would have with the U.S. would be like Canada. So our model is Canada. Canada still trades with America. They still have lots of things going back and forth, money, people. But no Canadian wants to be an American. If you talk to Canadian people and say, hey, how about you become an American? They're not interested. So they love being an independent country. Now, Canadians marry Americans at huge numbers, invest in their economy, travel back and forth. But Canada don't want to be part of America. You can just talk to them and find out. That's what we want with California. Open trade, a continuing connection, but we don't want America telling us how to do things with a lot of policies. California would be different to Iran as an independent country simply because we're different now. We don't like the American wars. We don't like lots of wars. We don't like xenophobia. We don't like saying everyone in this country is bad and let's watch out for them. We don't even like the use of Iranian. They talk about Iranians and they mean the Iranian government. They do the same thing to Russians. They mean the Russian government. They don't say that. They go Russians. They say Iranians. What you meant was you have a problem with the Iranian government, or you have a problem with the Russian government. Well, then how come in America they say Russians or Iranians? We don't do that in California. I can't promise you this and that specifically, but what I can say is picture this. You have to negotiate $1 billion deal. Now you have two people, Farad, you can negotiate with. One is a guy who lives on the other half of the world, has never traveled to Iran, never met an Iranian, never even heard Iranian spoken, has no clue what Iranian culture is. The other person you can negotiate with is your cousin. Which one would you prefer to negotiate with? Someone you have cultural and family ties to and who knows you? Or someone who has no clue what an Iranian is like or their culture or how they talk or think? That's the difference between California and the US of A in a future independent republic.
Great.
We're you. We have 1 million of you here. Of course, whatever we do is going to be reflective of Iranian culture. There's 1 million Iranians in California, but if you look at what percentage they are in America, it's like 0.0000001%. Iranians are never going to have that kind of pull in America, but they could have that kind of pull in an independent republic in California. Look how much pull they have now. It's called Tehrangeles. Everyone in California knows that. Iranians are already massively influencing California culture. For an independent country, of course that will continue. In America, you have nothing close to that.
Marcus, what are the prospects of your movement? What is your timeline? What is your status? What is the status of the movement as of now? If we are speaking legally, legal matters.
When Donald Trump won in 2016, there was a survey, two surveys that came out, and it said 32% of Californians were ready to secede that day. I want to double down on that. They didn't say, let's think about it, let's debate, let's talk to America. They said, let's get out right now. Now, the news here reported that as, that must mean 2/3 are against. That's not what Reuters or Stanford University said. They said, are you against it, are you for it, or are you not sure? 15.7% of people said they're not sure. That means 47.5, almost half of Californians said they were open to thinking about secession. No one in the politics here in California reached out to that group or acknowledged that. That's really weird. Whenever there's any group of Californians that says something within a 20% margin, politicians are almost always talking to them. There was nothing. We have been going to 8 different locations on the coast, interior, and throughout California, up and down. And what we find is people still willing to sign our initiative to secede, even though Joe Biden was elected president. So I want to repeat that. 8 locations around California, we have people still signing an initiative to secede, even with Joe Biden being elected. What they're seeing is that America is full of chaos. And even with Biden possibly winning this election, the amount of just chaos over this election, Californians don't hate America, and they don't hate Biden, but they don't think America's functioning much. And what CNN said, the CNN legal scholar Danny Savalas, he's the head of legal research for CNN and MSNBC, he literally said on TV during this time, California could just leave. Maybe it's illegal, maybe it's unconstitutional, but 5th largest economy. The USA isn't going to do anything because it would destabilize the economy for everybody. So frankly put, we get enough Californians talking about this, we could just make it happen. However, we in CalExit think we can get 25 red states to vote us out. The Republican Party a few months ago made their entire platform about don't be like Cali and California's bad. Routinely, you can see Republicans saying, well, the only reason that Trump lost was because of California. So California's got a giant target on its back like never before in American history. It's focused by the entire Republican Party and all the Republicans. And Farhad, I just sent you a tweet this morning about how 24 states are hardcore Republican. We only need 25 to get out.
Marcus, so legally speaking, so the way that California can legally secede from the United States is that you have to amend the Constitution, right? Because there's no provision in the Constitution for allowing a state to secede. There is a provision to add more states to the Union, but there's no provision to allow a state to secede. So in that sense, the Constitution has to be amended. And how the Constitution is amended is that 2/3 of the both chambers of the Congress has to vote to approve the amendment, and then I believe 38 states have to ratify that. So what are your thoughts?
There's a lot of legal scholars who say that, and on the surface, that does appear true. What we point out is something called Texas versus White and Erwin Chemerinsky. That's Erwin Chemerinsky, and Texas versus White. So the Supreme Court, which is the highest court in all of America, and according to the Constitution, settles all disputes under the law. So if there's a legal dispute or a legal question, it goes to the Supreme Court. That's what the Constitution says. Supreme Court actually looked at secession after the Civil War, after, not before. And what they said was, yes, you cannot leave on your own, but you could leave through, quotes, consent of the states, quotes, consent of the states. Erwin Chemerinsky, who's head of the, head of 2 different constitutional scholar groups at 2 different California law schools, said in GQ magazine that because of that, and because of the fact that Congress admitted California with only a 51% vote, perhaps consent to the states could mean a 51% vote out. That's the top constitutional scholar in all of California, and he by far beats all of the lawyers that have been saying, oh, it's got to be an amendment. Why do we have a constitutional scholar in California saying it doesn't necessarily have to be that? Why do we have a legal case called Texas versus White, which California newspapers mostly won't admit exists? And why, when they admit Texas versus White, they somehow manage to make sure the phrase consent to the state isn't there? We got into an argument with the head of the Berkeley Constitution Legal Center, David Carrillo. And in 2017, he said, you can't secede, it costs an amendment. Then we said, that's not true, there's Texas versus White. In 2018, he admitted for the first time Texas versus White existed, but then said, well, you can't secede. And we said, that's not true. It says consent to the states. Finally, in 2019, David Carrillo, director of the UC Berkeley, one of the top law schools in the world, Constitution Center, agreed with us. Why did he not say Texas versus White exists and it says consent to the states, and that might mean a 51% threshold in 2017? Why did we have to badger him and get him to back down 3 years later? And why did this director of a constitutional center at UC Berkeley eventually agree with us and what Erwin Chemerinsky said? What it tells us is that this isn't a settled dispute. It's not definitively going to be an amendment. It could be a simple consent to the states, which could be simply 25 states or 51% of Congress. We backed a constitutional scholar into saying that, and another one outright said at the beginning, I would like to see lawyers who insist that it must be an amendment tell those constitutional scholars that they're wrong and do it publicly. Otherwise, I don't believe you.
So we don't know until we take it to the court, huh?
Or call these people out. These are the top 2 constitutional scholars in California. How come no lawyers who say it's got to be an amendment call them out and go, Erwin Chemerinsky, you're wrong on interpreting the Constitution. David Carrillo, you're wrong on interpreting the Constitution. No one does that, which tells me they don't want to because they know they're going to be embarrassed, which means at best it's going to go to a decision by the Supreme Court. Well, the Supreme Court's majority conservative, and they're Trump appointees. That means they hate California too, and they come from a traditional legal philosophy that backs state rights. That's a win and a win for us.
Marcus, so what is the timeline for the movement? When would you be able to get this in the ballot so people can vote, and how long would it take afterwards to move on to the next levels, to the Congress and all that?
We have an initiative now. Because of California law, we're trying to collect signatures now. If it gets approved and goes to the voters, it would be going to the voters in about 1.5 years. Now, that may seem very far out, but here's the thing. The California government could enact our initiative any second. They could do it tomorrow. We, about 160,000 people across California, filed an initiative that says if you collect enough signatures, you can put it up for a vote. And if Californians vote for it, then it would order the California government to begin pursuing independence. However, tomorrow, if California politicians see a lot of support for CalExit, they'll just make it law instantaneously and not even wait 1.5 years. So it could happen tomorrow if the politicians were so inspired. One of the things that would inspire them is a lot of people talking about CalExit. Simply put, you help us prove, or we prove, that 47.5% of Californians are still open to this idea, and it's going to happen. The reason I have that kind of confidence is trajectory. Our governor said nation state this year, 2019. In 2017, he said, referring to California as a nation's dumb. So the governor said, I don't back CalExit, that's silly, in 2017. Then in 2019, he's saying, we're a nation, we're a nation. Gwyneth Paltrow is one of the biggest stars in Hollywood. Last year, she had a show called The Politician. If you watch season 2, episode 1, you can see her give a minutes-long speech about why California should secede. That's a major Hollywood star. The Young Turks is one of the largest, most popular political talk shows in California. Cenk Uygur, the head of that show, was talked into backing California secession. There's also an art exhibit by a well-known Californian artist, Cole Sternberg, who has an art exhibit today on California acting as an independent nation. Additionally, you can say California is a donor state, and nobody laughs at you now here in California. You can say California is a nation or like a nation, and no one laughs at you. I started in 2012. You could not do that. 2013, you couldn't do that. 2013, 2014, 2015. It wasn't until 2016 you could start saying these things and not being laughed at. So you go from a place here in California where you say we're a donor state and we lose financially, you're a liar. You say we're like a nation, you're a liar. You say we basically have a separate culture, you're a liar. Now everyone says it. All politicians, all reporters, all Californians. That massive mental shift happened in 5 years. Give us 5 more years. Where do you think we're going to be at?
Marcus, so we only have a few minutes left. So can you briefly tell me what is your projection? When is the earliest that California can become independent, if at all?
California can become independent if we collect signatures for the initiative, and then a vote would come place in about 1.5 years from now. If Californians massively support CalExit and simply just talk about it a lot, the California government will enact CalExit right away. So we have a plan and process to make something happen in about 1.5 years. But I got to tell you, if people here say, let's get the hell out tomorrow, we're just going to do it. And the politicians here will just back it up and make it happen. So there's a hard legal path, and then there's more of an inspirational path. And I will remind you that the CNN legal scholar for MSNBC and CNN said, well, you know, if many Californians want that, it'll just happen. Look at coronavirus protocols. So when the coronavirus was really hitting in March, April, the federal government was not providing directions on how to reopen the economy. Our governor went on TV and said, we're going to ignore anything the federal government says. I don't care what they say. We're doing our own thing here in California, and we're like a nation. That's called nullification. The last time that was done was 1860 in the Civil War. So you already have the governor nullifying federal law, a legal action you haven't seen since the Civil War, and saying we're basically like a nation. That was 6 months ago. We're already on track. If we just have the idea talked about more, if we get more support, if we keep CalExit as the 7th most popular term on Twitter, as the people of Iran were able to do, it's going to go big because the idea is still there. They're trying to ignore that many Californians want this. That's the only reason it hasn't already happened. And one thing that would really help us is if the people of Iran said they would be willing to have an embassy for an independent California. When
I know a lot of people were moved by what you said about, you know, opening cultural and political, diplomatic, you know, relations with Iran. Would you elaborate on that?
Yes, California was seen as a joke in 2016. We had about 10,000 members and we were in the news, and we were saying the same thing we are now. However, we were able to go to a conference called the Dialogue of Nations with a bunch of separatist groups, and we really went to town trying to promote that and trying to show that we were friendly to the Russian people. In return, we were able to have an embassy cultural center. It wasn't really an embassy. We called it an embassy, but it was a cultural center. But it was really the people of Russia saying, hey, we're going to give a little space, we the people of Russia, to this idea that there's an independent California, and we would love to be open to that. We got global news, and that rocketed us to being a hardcore, serious movement overnight. And I'm sorry, the phone disconnected. If we had a similar thing from the people of Iran as a cultural center, where the people of Iran are saying, hey, I understand it's not legal, I understand it's not actually an embassy, but it's kind of like an embassy, and in our hearts, we are open to the idea of an independent California living here. The fact that we had that with Russia, and here's a second country doing it, makes the idea of an independent California deadly serious.
Maybe you can start with a virtual embassy. What do you think about that?
As long as it's coming from the people of Iran. So the big takeaway is that it has to appear as though the actual people in that country wanted this and are doing it. If they do it, yes. If it appears as though it's outside of Iran, it's just going to be interpreted as some sort of gimmick that we did. It as long as it appears genuine and from the people of Iran,
I would think that they would definitely love that. So, Marcus, we're going to air your recent message to the Iranian people at the end of our talk.
Thank you.
And what is so lastly, I want to ask you, What is your message to the Iranian people, and how do Iranian people in Iran and in California support you and your movement?
If you're in California, you're one of us, period. You can talk about CalExit. You can download the petition. You can sign the petition, and you can share the petition. If you're Californian, you're Californian.
Can you share more information? Where can they sign the petition? Where can they look it up?
Go to yescalifornia.org or Yes California CalExit on Facebook or Yes California CalExit on Twitter or yescalifornia.org. Or, Farhad, you can give my email out. It's marcus.ruiz.evans@gmail.com. That's MARCUS, period, RUIZ, period, EVANS@gmail.com. MARCUS, period, RUIZ, period, EVANS@gmail.com. Or Yes California, or Yes California Twitter, or Yes California on Facebook. Give us a message. We'll get it to you. The initiative's available for everybody, and simply talking about it. And also signing it, but also just talking about CalExit and saying, wouldn't we be better off as an independent nation? There's 1 million Iranians in California. If they alone just seriously started talking about CalExit, it'll spread throughout California and we'll be independent a week later. That's how much pull those people already have here. To the people of Iran, in Iran, I would say this. Did any American ever talk to you this way? Did Obama? Did Obama, the good president, come to you and say,
I can answer on their behalf. No.
That's the point. I don't want to sell you something that sounds like a sale. I want the people of Iran to look at our history. We have many cultures here. We love immigration. America's not sure about immigration. We believe in climate change. We travel around the world to support it. They still can't pass that. They still invade other countries. We opposed the last 2 big wars they did. Don't take my word up. The Iranian people in Iran are smart people, and you have internet. Don't take my word for it. Look up California culture. Look up how when America said X, we said Y. When they wanted to do this, we said no. You know, we invented glasnost here. So the reason that the Soviet Union and America started working together and you had glasnost was because of a group of Californians called the Esalen Institute. Richard Nixon, who created the thaw between China and America, was from California. Our governor, Jerry Brown, went to Russia the same day that Donald Trump pulled Russian embassies out. Our current governor, when Donald Trump said, I don't like Latinos, went to Latin America in a foreign country and said, I love you guys. Think of us differently. I mean, we have gone out of our way to show that we have different policy preferences than America. If we're independent, it's going to be more of the same. Don't take my word for it. Iranian people, do your research, check it out on the internet. I know you're going to find what I'm talking about. It's there. I know you'll find it.
Thank you, Marcus, for being with us today. I'm sure the Iranian people would appreciate your tribute to them. And thank you for talking to us today. And we're out of time. We'll talk to you soon again.
Thank you, Farhad. I'd love to talk to you more. I'm going to go do some more interviews, but maybe we can catch up soon. Also, please send me the link whenever it's available. I want to share wherever you publish this.
Of course.
To 100